Hello, everyone. Welcome to the panel Groundwater and Intensive Use on our first Making Groundwater Visible from the Groundwater Project. I'm your host, Everton de Oliveira. Thank you so much for joining us. Your participation is very important for the future of groundwater. Share and like our content. Please upload your picture watching the event and tag it at the groundwater to be featured on our social media pages. We count on you. Like and share our posts. Volunteer to help translate books into your mother tongue. Make a difference. Let's make the groundwater visible. Before we start, I would like to thank our sponsors for making this event possible and free for all of you and for us as well. TDS, Technical Development Solutions from Saudi Arabia. Unplanned, a consulting company from Brazil. G360 from the University of Guelph in Canada. Solinst Equipments from Canada. And Waterloo Barrier also from Canada. And also to all the individual donors. Without them, this noble endeavor would not be possible. Please, join them, donate if you are an individual, or add the name of your company as a sponsor to a game changer initiative. Gandhi, in his writings, has shown concern about water quality and scarcity. He says, next to air, water is a necessity of life. As in many places on earth, his country of love is suffering from both problems. Intensive use has made humans to be creative along the ages. Now, more than ever, groundwater intensive use needs attention, and science and public awareness are key to success. We, at the Groundwater Project, are leading a movement where your presence is more than welcome. It is absolutely necessary. The future of water depends on us, all of us. We have the pleasure and the honor to bring you two important people to help discuss this topic. Dr. Dinesh Singhal from India and Dr. Manuel Sapiano from Malta. Dinesh Singhal has almost 50 years of experience with groundwater, teaching at IIT Rourke in India and helping international bodies with his expertise. Dr. Manuel Sapiano is a hydrogeologist and is the CEO of the Energy and Water Agency of Malta. Okay, please, both of you, I would like to start with a very brief introduction of each of you, and then we go for the presentation of Dinesh first, and then Manuel after. So please, Dinesh, welcome, and tell a little bit about your career for us before you start. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much. As explained by the coordinator, I am Professor D.C. Singhal from Indian Institute of Technology. It's called IIT, located in Roorkee, India. I was a UNESCO fellow, and now I am retired. So the topic of my today's talk is groundwater and intensive use in the Indian context.
Okay, now please, Manuel, make a brief introduction of yourself before we go into the presentation. Thank you very much for coming, for your time. You're very kind.
Thanks, thanks to you. So, Manuel Sapiano, I am the CEO of the Energy and Water Agency of Malta. It is an agency which supports government in the development of both energy and water policies. And obviously, in the context of Malta, water and particularly groundwater is a very important supply source and therefore is very central to the development of national policies. Our role is to support government in the development of scientifically based policies.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We'll get back to you very soon. Please, Dinesh, could you make your presentation? It's your turn. It's all yours. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, sir. So the topic of my presentation is groundwater in intensive use in the Indian context. Just to start with, as you know, that India has a parliamentary form of government, which is federal in structure, and it has got about 37 states, and many of these states and union territories have their own groundwater departments and groundwater monitoring mechanisms. The apex groundwater agency in India is the Central Groundwater Board. In short, it is called CGWB. So, and it is under the Ministry of Water Resources, River Development, and Ganga Rejuvenation. And this is the apex organization dealing with monitoring, assessment, and management of groundwater resources. The groundwater monitoring is done by CGWB through its 29 field offices throughout the country, with the headquarters at Faridabad in the Haryana state. There is a coordination between groundwater departments of the states and union territories with the respective field offices of CGWB. Just briefly, I want to tell about the characteristics of the network. Groundwater level monitoring network of CGWB consists of nearly 23,000 monitoring stations. Of these, nearly 16,500 are open dug wells, and the remaining 6,500 are purpose-built piezometers. As shown in this map, you can see the distribution of the wells and the piezometers in India. If you see the top north, it is blank area, and this blank area, it indicates that these are mountainous regions where it is not possible to drill wells or tube wells. So that's how it has been shown as blank. There are no monitoring wells, or very little. Now the depth of open dug wells are mostly around about 10 meters or 15 meters, and the depth of piezometers, it varies from 50 to 300 meters. And they are having some few high frequency automatic measurements, especially with water level measured from these monitoring stations 4 times in a year. But the monitoring is done mainly by steel tapes and sounders in the dug wells. And there was a World Bank assisted national hydrology project where efforts have been made to strengthen the network, and automatic level monitoring, water level monitoring with real-time, near real-time measurements is done with the addition of more piezometers and installation of around 9,000 water level recorders with telemetry across India. Now this slide shows the total precipitation in the country is of the order of 4,000 billion cubic meters, and the annual water availability is 1,869 billion cubic meters, and the utilizable water is 1,137 BCM, which is about 60.8% of the annual water availability. Out of this, surface water is about 690 BCM, groundwater is 447 BCM. And the expected demand in 2050 is 1,180 BCM. If you see the diagram, the reducing per capita water availability is very clearly shown in this. In 1951, it was 5,177 million, it is 5,177 cubic meters per capita per year. Whereas now it has come down in 2021 to 15,045 cubic meters. And in 2051, it is expected to go down to 1,140 cubic meters per capita per year. So there is a decrease in the per capita availability of water. Now, groundwater accounts for about 64% of irrigation needs of the country, and 85% of rural drinking water needs, whereas more than 50% of urban water needs are also met with groundwater. In last 4 decades, wells have contributed more than 80% in increasing net irrigation. And about 90% of total groundwater extracted in India, it is used for irrigation purposes. So there is a cascading effect of rural employment generation, and the contribution of groundwater to India's GDP is around 10%. And groundwater-based irrigation economy is more than or bigger than US 60 billion. I hope I am clear. So despite the huge investment of surface water scheme so far, dependence on groundwater is increasing. Why it is increasing? Surface water, lot of funds have been spent, but the dependence on groundwater is much more and it is increasing. The driving factors are many. The cheap drilling technology and water well construction materials, including water pumps, they are fairly cheap because they are mostly manufactured and fabricated within India. And there is a raised awareness about groundwater as a dependable resource. Even in drought years, there is a command over the resource and higher productivity. Presently, more than 22 million wells are operational in agriculture sector, and no census is available on domestic or industrial wells. It would be several millions for sure. This is as per the report of Garduno, who was in World Bank, and he gave his report in 2010. Now, there are about 14 aquifer systems in the country, ranging from the loose alluvium of Ganga River and allied tributaries. Then the sedimentary rocks, they comprise laterite aquifers, basalt, sandstone, shale, limestone, and the hard rocks include granite, schist, gneisses, quartzites, charnokites, etc. So these are total 14 aquifer systems in the country. Now the rainfall pattern is highly controlling the depth to water level in the country. And as you can see from this left side map, India's groundwater resource availability is strongly related with monsoon, and it is mainly the southwestern monsoon. And the water levels in the northwestern part in Rajasthan state, desert state of Rajasthan, they are very deep, whereas in the northern alluvium part, they are quite shallow, maybe up to 5 to 7 meters below the ground level. But in the other parts of the country, especially in the southern part, there are hard rocks, and therefore water levels in them, they can be as deep as 40 meters below the ground. But if you see the portion in the north of India, between Pakistan and China, there are discontinuous aquifers because of the hard rocks which are present over there. Now, so what I want to say is that there is unplanned and reckless exploitation of groundwater in the country. There is overexploitation, and large area is under geogenic contamination. So what is happening due to overexploitation? There is decline of water level, so that the lifting of water is becoming more costly. There is drying up of some of the aquifers, and the yield of the wells somewhere is decreasing or dwindling. And particularly in hard rock areas, limited yield sustainability is there. The river flows also reduces sometimes, and it has got adverse effect on wetlands. Then in the coastal areas, there is seawater intrusion, and groundwater sinks are developed around urban clusters. So other issues of groundwater resource management are large areas sometimes have undergone geogenic contamination from fluoride, arsenic, salinity, iron, and nitrate. Nitrate is especially more in the urban areas where industries and mines are located. Underutilization of groundwater resources in eastern states is also one reason. So waterlogging and soil salinity problems, then impact of climate change on groundwater is more, particularly when there is high intensity, short duration rainfall and prolonged drought. This results in less recharge. And then there is anthropogenic contamination from industries, mines, agriculture, and nitrate. No, so the first report about the water level decline and aquifer desaturation was reported from parts of India, particularly from the northwestern parts of India through the Central Groundwater Board surveys, and it was reported internationally first time in 2009, particularly with the data from this GRACE satellite. As you can see in the map, northwestern part of the country, including the desert area, is highly affected by such decline. Now, it is necessary and some replenishment of groundwater resource um, is done as to how the recharge is taking place due to the rainfall. So for that purpose, a stage of groundwater development is calculated for each of the assessment unit, because assessment unit is normally a part of a city or town which we call as taluka or tehsil in our language. And then we have classified these assessment units into safe if the uh, stage of groundwater development is about 70% or less, semi-critical, critical, overexploited, and saline. Saline area is about 1%. So as you can see, stage of groundwater development is defined as the ratio of annual recharge to the annual extraction. And there are some areas which are red in this map, India's map, which indicate that there is overexploitation of groundwater in these areas. Similarly, in some southern parts also, the stage of groundwater development is high. Sometimes it goes beyond 100%. So that's why this overexploitation is taking place. So therefore, unless we adopt a sustainable use of groundwater, we may spin into a disaster. And we should go for holistic understanding of aquifers by delineating them properly, understand the aquifer hydraulics, and understand the groundwater chemistry and contamination. Then you have to also decide to use the resource efficiently. Particularly, we have to try to live within the available dynamic resource. Otherwise, we are going for a disaster. So these are the things. And what are the interventions which are necessary for arresting the decline? So there are two types of interventions. One is the demand side intervention, another is the supply side intervention. Demand side intervention would be something like creating artificial recharge in the arid and semi-arid areas and so on. Now, keeping this in view, Government of India initiated a massive program to map the aquifers, costing about 50,000 million Indian rupees. It's a massive program. It started in 2012. And four major components of this program included mapping of aquifers, resource, quality, recharge potential, groundwater modeling and management plan, dissemination of data information plan, participatory management of other resource. So yeah, yet there is a ray of hope, and situation is not as gloomy or as disappointing as everywhere, because there are untapped resources available in some northeastern, eastern, and central parts of the country. So for starting this aquifer mapping program, it is called NAQUIM. So in the 6 pilot areas were selected in the different geological terrains of the country. including the desert state Rajasthan. And these states, these 6 pilot areas, they were located in different geological terrains. That was the important to get a representative picture of the behavior of the aquifer materials. So there are different codes given to the pilot project areas. Now, what is the plan, approach and process flow for aquifer mapping? Mainly it is the aquifer mapping program, but in this it comprises of 4 main components: data compilation and data gap analysis, data acquisition through drilling of exploratory wells, pumping tests, geophysical surveys, water quality analysis, then groundwater level study, and determination of specific yield and soil infiltration capacity and intake capacity of the aquifers. And then third one is development of lithological model and preparation of aquifer map. And finally, development of aquifer management plan, so that we can decide as to how to enhance the availability of groundwater. Just for example, I am giving you a data of Ahmednagar district of Maharashtra state, which is uh, close to Bombay also. So this Ahmednagar district has got an area of 2,750 square kilometer or so, and it is a hard rock area mainly located in basalt. Basaltic aquifers are present here. They are alternated with the we call them red bowls. They are the clay layers. So each basalt flow is separated from each other by the presence of clay layer called red bowl. So the proposed management plan was worked out by the data which was available. And in this, there are 2 aquifers, Aquifer 1 and Aquifer 2. And the first aquifer was where the dynamic storage was 360 MCM. MCM is million cubic meters. And in storage, aquifer storage, aquifer water storage was 1.6 MCM. And the second aquifer, which is below this, it has got a resource of 13.81 MCM. So total resources are of the order of 375.53 MCM. Now, in this, we try to generate additional resources of 94.6 MCM to bring a stage of groundwater development to 70%. Earlier, it was more than 100%. And we, by using this management plan, we try to bring the stage of groundwater development to 70%, which consisted of 375.5 is the existing resource, 31.6 MCM is created by cropping pattern change, which cropping pattern is suggested to the farmers, and when they change the cropping pattern, there is an addition of groundwater in this. Then there is a due to water use efficiency 37.9 MCM and artificial recharge, or there in the other countries they call it managed aquifer recharge, MAR program. So by this there is an addition of the water source generation by 25.1 MCM or so. So total resource was increased to 470.8 MCM. So this is the kind of situation and the management plan. It looks like this. Change in cropping pattern 31.6 MCM, water use efficiency 37.9 MCM, and artificial recharge or MAR is 25.13 MCM. And then additional requirement is there of the order of 94.65 MCM. The gap is still not fulfilled. Now, due to all these steps and measures, and by systematic aquifer mapping program, now the irrigation deprived districts, they are 120 found, they are found to be 126 in number as per the irrigation holdings, and less than 30% of the land holdings get assured irrigation. So And these less than 30%, they are located in, they are about 112, and they are located in, distributed in 12 states of the country. Now, out of the 112 districts which have got surplus water, 96 are surplus groundwater where stage of development is very good, less than 60%. The water levels are generally less than 15-meter deep, and rainfall is more than 750 millimeter. So like this 112 districts, water is surplus stage of the, here the artificial recharge schemes have been uh, given special emphasis by the government of India. There is also added, this is added by rainwater harvesting. And there are 2 or 3 national level projects. One is called Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Scheme Guarantee Act 2005. And this is really helping in creating more resources because of the artificial recharge programs which are carried out under this program. Then there is National Rural Drinking Water Program under the Ministry of Drinking and Rural Sanitation. So it promotes conjunctive use of surface and groundwater and focus on harvesting for recharge while clearing some schemes. State governments have also launched their distinct visions for artificial recharge, and they are known as by local names like Jalyukt, Shibir, and Mission Kakatiya, etc. Now, due to all these efforts, what has happened that NASA reported on 22 September 2017, and they reported a reverse trend in the falling water levels. There was a reverse trend in parts of South and West India between 2003 to 2014, and water levels, they started rising. So you can see the brown areas in the north and blue areas in the south, where the water levels have increased by as much as 6 meters. So like that, water levels have come up. So this has helped the situation. This is a NASA image of the 22 September 2017. So for getting optimal benefit, I am just ending. So you have to dovetail artificial recharge plan with the outputs of NECWIM. NECWIM is the National Aquifer Mapping Program. Then you have to understand, for understanding the recharge mechanism and pathways, isotopic investigation plays an important role. Then you have to target the depleted aquifers which need recharge with proper design. And treated wastewater also has been tried as source water for artificial recharge. And quality of source water has to be carefully watched in shallow geogenically contaminated aquifers, because if the water quality is not good for recharge, then the aquifer itself may be contaminated. So mega recharge is possible in hydrogeologically suitable areas. And also you have to target paleo channels in the Ganga plain. You know, there are paleo channels, like you might have heard about the hidden river Saraswati, which is actually lying hidden below the river alluvium, and a lot of research effort is being devoted for identifying the course of that hidden river, and it goes from Allahabad in the UP area in the Uttar Pradesh or northern India to the Arabian Sea towards west. So like that, these are paleo channels or paleo rivers, they are extremely important. So with this, I end my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dinesh.
Yes, thank you.
Nice pictures that one. I love it.
Yeah, they just, yeah, well, flowing automatically, it's going, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes,
We'd like to ask Manuel, please, to make your presentation now.
Okay, so I will also share my screen. Help me to see if is that okay?
No, it's perfect.
Okay, so let's say, my presentation, I will try to tackle groundwater management, obviously in a context of intensive use, but also from a policy perspective. So what should we be doing to protect groundwater and ensure that groundwater can remain as a viable source in the coming future? And I will be giving some examples from Malta, where groundwater is subject to intensive use, as to how this type of framework can be undertaken. First of all, when we talk about intensive use, I think the starting point of any consideration has to be the unavailability of sufficient water resources. If we take our case in Malta, we know immediately that the groundwater reserves, if used sustainably, are not sufficient to meet demand. And even with unavailability, we still have the objective of ensuring an adequate supply of water to the population, so drinking water, to economic activities, whilst also respecting the needs of the environment. And therefore, we need to talk about security of supply, supply and demand, and environmental protection. And we see the protection of groundwater as being centered in this comprehensive context, and not just in isolation. In fact, one of our underlying main phrases, catchphrases in our policies is that groundwater cannot be protected if it is considered in isolation with the national water context. In fact, if we look at the issues dealing with water demand, because we do believe that the main context of what needs to be tackled is water demand. If I need 2 liters of water and I'm using them efficiently, therefore there needs to be some way for those 2 liters of water to be supplied. So water demand increases as a function of population, of climate, of the economy, of the practices which we do. So those are controlling factors. But then if water demand is not addressed, it can lead to the degradation of groundwater. If groundwater is a source which is used to satisfy demand, it can lead, if there is sufficient degradation of groundwater, to unavailability of supply. If water demand is not met legally, there will be illegal activities to withdraw water. And also, one could look at long-term economic impacts if water demands are not made. So, when considering groundwater management within this context of a holistic water management framework, we try to have this cause-effect relationship, which is centered on the management of the demand and how we're going to supply to meet that demand. So therefore, the main context which we try to work on is addressing water demand by all the water using sectors. A very key aspect is ensuring the highest efficiency of water use, and there one can look at the conventional tools like education, legislation, economic tools, technology, infrastructure, how to address demand. But I will put in a but in capital letters. We are talking of a context of water scarcity. We are talking of a context where it is very challenging to meet water demand because of intensive use, even if we have high efficiency levels. In the case of Malta, it is also because the natural water resources, and in our case, natural water resources relate only to groundwater, meeting water demand, they are not sufficient to meet water demand. And therefore, our policy focuses on water demand management, but it also sees this water demand management measures implemented with water supply augmentation measures. And we describe our strategy as a two-pronged strategy where water demand is addressed by water demand management and by supply augmentation strategies. Supply augmentation strategies refer to the alternative or non-conventional water resources, but they also refer to groundwater development where, through activities such as managed aquifer recharge, one can also augment the available groundwater supply resource base. Supply augmentation can also come from an increased understanding of the groundwater system, because the more we know about the groundwater system, the safer we can manage it, and the safer we can be, and the surer we can be about the volume of water which we can address. Because groundwater is not a cup, let's say, a glass of water from which I can take all the water which I need through a single point, but distributed abstraction, particularly in the context of coastal aquifers, can lead to higher yields compared to a single point, which leads to seawater intrusion. And therefore, the greater knowledge on the groundwater environment and the greater knowledge on how the groundwater environment should be managed can also help us to augment, to better use, possibly is a more definite term than augment, our groundwater reserves. And therefore, when considering water use and considering water use under these conditions, we need to take into account of three important metrics. First of all, there is the environmental metric. The environmental metric is important because we need to protect groundwater. We need to protect the quantity of groundwater, the status of groundwater, but we also need to protect the quality of groundwater. There is also the social aspect, and it relates to how much we can manage to address the needs of the population in, I was going to say, a cost-effective manner. And there comes the financial aspect. And in order to protect groundwater, we need to find the best balance between these three aspects, such that the policies which are derived, the methods which are derived to ensure the effective use of groundwater can be applied in a real-world context. In a context where a country needs water, in a context where people need water, in a context where we need to protect the environment, and in a context where we need to ensure security of supply. So these different contexts are important, and it is very important that we fit in groundwater protection in this broad integrated water management framework. Now, looking at Malta and focusing more on Malta, let's introduce Malta. It is a small island in the Mediterranean, a very small island, 316 square kilometers, but has a very high population density, around 1,500 inhabitants per square kilometer. And therefore, that means a high demand for water per square kilometer. And therefore, increased stress, increased pressures on the groundwater which sustains our islands. If we look at the urban land cover, because of that population, 25% of the area of the country is urbanized, which means covered in concrete, less recharge. Our climate is a semi-arid Mediterranean climate, so there's variability in rainfall between summer and winter, and we have long dry summers between, I would say, April and September, where rain is very, very scarce. Even the mean annual rainfall is low, around 550 millimeters, which is further reduced by the hot climate because of evapotranspiration. And therefore, instead of dealing with the actual rainfall, we need to deal with the effective rainfall, the rainfall which percolates to groundwater, and it is around 15 centimeters per year. And looking at our natural resource base, the natural water availability in our country is around 70 cubic meters per person per day. And mainly that is derived from groundwater resources. To put things into perspective, particularly at an EU level, one could see that the population density of Malta is very, very high compared to that in other EU member states, and therefore the pressures on groundwater. And corollary to that comes the fact that with the small land size, with the low availability of water, the natural availability of water per person per year in Malta is almost nothing compared to other countries in the EU. In fact, if we look at UN benchmarks, we find the famous benchmark of 500 cubic meters per year per person, which is the manageable capability for water management. As I was saying, our availability is around 70 cubic meters. Now, what does that lead to? That leads to, let's say, a different way of managing natural resources, a different way of managing water. And it leads to the need to supplement groundwater. We have a demand, granted, we have to ensure that that demand is efficient, but then we need to create the water resources and manage our existing water resources to ensure that demand is met in a sustainable manner. And if we go in our history, we look at rainwater capturing in cisterns and features to retain water on the land, to increase percolation, which go back even to during the Arabic period, so more than 1,500 years ago. Even when in the 1500s, when our capital city was being built up, there was a legislation to harvest rainwater, and therefore this was showing that the groundwater known at that time was even not sufficient to address demand, and therefore this pressing need to create additional water resources. And this continued throughout the years, and in particular with desalination, particularly since the 1980s, where we've been at the forefront of reverse osmosis technology to supplement our water supplies. Where does this leave groundwater? If we look at our policy approach, we are looking at a diversification of the resource base. If we look at currently, groundwater supplies over 50% of the total needs of the country. Urban water, water for industry, water for agriculture, and water for environment. We're looking at the development of alternative water resources, treated waters, desalinated water, rainwater harvesting to reduce the pressure on groundwater. So therefore, if we look simply at what we are trying to do in our policies, basically we have the water demand pie, which we're trying to squeeze, but then also to shift the different portions of the pie so as to reduce dependence on groundwater, which would enable us to ensure the effective use and the sustainable use of groundwater, and therefore give the aquifers the necessary breathing space to increase their status, improve their status, and therefore remain as a very important water source for our future. This is the comprehensive context which we operate, and we try to do this through the development of national water use cycles, where increased supplies and shifting of supplies is managed in a context of reducing pressures on the natural resource. What have been Malta's major successes? An important success has been demand management at the user level, at the utility level. One of the main wastages of water are leakages in the distribution systems. We had extremely high leakages in our distribution systems. These were reduced significantly, demand reduced, and that enabled us to reduce our dependence also on groundwater for urban supply. Other factors of demand management relate to tariffs, where we've enacted a rising block tariff so that wastage of water is taxed at higher rates. In fact, any consumption over a period of a year which is higher than 90 liters per person per day goes at a price of around €5 per cubic meter. But also we focused on engagement, particularly education, teaching children in simple ways what is groundwater, how we depend on it, how it gets polluted, how we can protect it, and also looking at the public and looking at how people can use water effectively, and also stressing the need that this groundwater resource is finite. We need to use it, particularly with industrial and agricultural users who are direct users of the resource, how they need to protect it if they want their activity to continue. Also, we try to diversify our water resources, as I mentioned, particularly looking at the harvesting of rainwater, also investing in desalination, and particularly reducing the energy requirements of desalination to enable us to produce more water from the sea, but lowering the environmental footprint related to electricity use and emissions, and also introducing water reuse, which can be used by agriculture to replace groundwater. And therefore, we recognize the demand, we support farmers to be efficient, but we also give them an opportunity to move to other types of water. In this case, reclaimed water. But also groundwater. So we've got two main groundwater typologies, basically. Let's say, our rock formations are like a number of different layers with interlying impervious layers, which give rise to high standing aquifers which we call perched aquifers. Perched means lying at a higher level, lying at a higher state. These are the traditional water resources of Malta, historical, and are mainly used for agriculture. But the main aquifer systems, the main groundwater bodies, are our sea level aquifers, which are in direct contact with seawater, both laterally and also vertically. And therefore, these density dependent systems are very fragile. They respond with level changes and with intrusion with regard whenever there is obstruction, and we need to manage even obstruction of these systems quite intensively. In particular, because of these, let's say, their delicate balance, which when broken leads to seawater intrusion and therefore deterioration in the quality of the aquifer system. This does not also consider that also these aquifers need to be protected from the surface, particularly from contaminants which come from our different everyday uses and also contaminants which come from the agricultural sector. And to do this, we've developed a number of, let's say, through the years, there have been developed a number of interesting abstraction methodologies, in particular trying to spread abstraction. So instead of having a single point abstraction, which is a borehole, one can abstract from a gallery, and this gallery spreads the weight of the abstraction over a larger area and therefore limits the upcoming of seawater from behind. These galleries are kilometers long, driven into the topmost layers of the saturated zone, and help to skim the top of the lens, of the freshwater lens, and therefore limit the intrusion of seawater in the aquifer system. As I said, a very delicate balance, which needs to be managed properly and managed quite intensively. In particular, definitely like a lot of water management aspects in other countries, there are standard tools which one can use to monitor these systems. In the case of these aquifers, we also do use water balances, which currently show that there's a margin of over abstraction which needs to be corrected. But also one must move towards innovative tools. Innovative tools include modeling, particularly numerical modeling, resource modeling, status monitoring, and the increase of monitoring activities, the monitoring of abstraction, where each and every well, including private wells, agricultural wells, industrial wells, are being metered, and also the conjunctive use, where options for the replacement of groundwater use by other sources are promoted. And therefore, to conclude, investments alone do not solve the water issue problem. It is the context in which investments are made. So therefore, the solutions which must be developed in particular for the conditions of a particular country. There needs to be a bottom-up approach, understanding the concerns, the needs of water users, such that we can ensure that users use water efficiently, but in the same time, we can provide them with the resources necessary to shift their supply to other sources. This is the policy which we have developed, and this is the policy which we promote as saying that effective groundwater protection cannot be undertaken if groundwater is considered alone and not in an integrated water management framework. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Manuel. Thank you very much for your nice presentation. So we both had very nice presentations of very distinct situation from both countries, either in size or in how it is used. From my understanding, I see that, well, the situation of Malta, because it's a small island, you have quite a good control of the whole country. And in India, it's a big country with a huge population, right? And then you have differences all over the country, and you have lots of groundwater. I have a first question for Dinesh first.
Yes.
I've seen some. I've been taking, putting some attention into India because India has a very intensive use of groundwater. And one of the
Yes.
things that we had was a short movie showing, farmers, the suicide among farmers because of lack of water. Why? They buy, they need to invest money and the water doesn't come, invest money in wells, so it's a groundwater issue. The wells don't produce enough water because they have a intersection with the other wells from other farmers, and that's a problem. Would you tell us something about that? Would you know that? How is this being addressed in India? Because you have some places where the water scarcity is very, very important, and you don't have the central control as you have in Malta. Could you tell us about that a little bit, Dinesh, please?
Yes, this is a very critical problem. If I say, because of the geological inhomogeneity and heterogeneity of the rocks, some of the areas they are facing this problem of scarcity of water for the farmers for irrigation. And as I told you, that more than 90% of the groundwater resource is being used for irrigation or in the country. In spite of this, because of the weather vagaries, then it becomes difficult for the farmer to get water at the time when they need it most. That is the problem. And another is that each of the farmer, their holdings are very small. The farmer on an average, its holding is about 2 hectares or less than that sometimes. 2 hectares, as you know, that 1 hectare is about 10,000 square meter, isn't it? So less than 20,000 square meter, one holding for one farmer. So, and then he doesn't have enough money, enough resource to make it his own wells. And sometimes when tricky rocks are there like basalt, in basalt, you don't find water so easily. As I told you, that there are different flows of basalt and they are separated by the clay layers. So it becomes difficult for them um, to get the water at the desired time and at the desired place. So where I know that when I visited some areas, command areas of Sardar Sarovar and Narmada Sagar, you might have heard about these two projects in India. So some of the farmers, they had tears in their eyes because of the shortage of water, and they were worried that the dam construction of the dam, Sardar Sarovar Dam, will lead to submergence of their land. So that was the fear which they used to face. But still, with the government efforts and all that, Sardar Sarovar project has been finalized. It has been now it has come into being, and the government of India has given enough compensation to the farmers who have suffered. But still, there are some grievances and suicides are taking place. And you might have heard that there is a big movement of the farmers going on in India now. And they want certain changes in the food procurement policies of the government, which the previous government was pursuing, I would say, rather satisfactorily. But now the present government, with the new things emerging and new scene emerging, with the you can say interest of the farmers on long term, they have taken some steps so that these they get enough returns for their produce. So but still there are differences and like that. So there are problems, yes, but then government of India is taking enough steps to mitigate the problems.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Manuel, in your presentation, you said you have two statements that are quite important that I believe you said. First, you have a clear vision that you don't have enough water. Second, you mentioned that not only money solves the situation, you can pour more money, and even like that, you need more to solve your problem. As you have a culture of using little water compared to some countries like mine, Brazil or Canada,
Yes, yes.
even parts of the US, Manuel. What do you have to say for a country where they're facing the water scarcity now, in your opinion, like India, in some places they're facing scarcity, which was not usual before. Would you have something to say? Would groundwater be a final solution, Manuel? Manuel, now, please, Dinesh.
So, if we look at even how things have developed in Malta, so there was a time when, let's say, going back to the 1970s, 1980s, where because of the lack of alternative options, dependence was just on groundwater. What did that lead to? It led to overexploitation. Overexploitation led to seawater intrusion, reducing quality, and the water was not good for public supply. Even when there were cutbacks in the production to limit the onset of salinity, it led to insufficient water and therefore water cuts to the population. The initial solution which, let's say, was launched was desalination. And back in the 1980s, 1982, I believe, we had our first commercial scale desalination plant, which was one of the largest plants in the world at that time, to supplement our water supply. A second one was built, a third was built, a fourth and a fifth. But still, we couldn't meet demand. And that was because there were a lot of leakages in the system. So therefore, then, a program for leakage management was introduced. This supply augmentation and demand management, let's say, type of approach, conjunctive type of approach, meant that we managed to close 2 desalination plants. The remaining 3 started operating at half capacity, and we managed to reduce also our dependence on groundwater for public supplies, and therefore giving the central part of the island the necessary breathing space, and it is an area where today we are seeing the aquifer recover. When I say this, it doesn't mean that we don't have any problems related to private supply. We do have. Like we have areas which are recovering, we have areas which are deteriorating. And this is once more the same approach which we're trying to adopt. You cannot say, look, there is an immediate cut on groundwater abstraction when a sector depends on abstraction. But we can try to develop alternative resources. We can try to support sectors in investing in efficiency so as to reduce groundwater abstraction. So the important thing is, as I said, not to consider any solution which can be a game changer on its own. It's, let's say, the management of groundwater, the provision of other water resources, the efficient use of water, all these needs to be considered in different weights, in different types, depending on what are the characteristics of the different countries. There's India and Malta, definitely 2 different types of countries, size, climate, name it. But the concept of integrated water management, I think, rests. That is what we need to promote. And if you look at the Malta story, the Malta experience, We failed when we tried to protect groundwater on its own. We failed when we tried to say, look, stop obstructing, because when you stop legal obstruction, another illegal point crops up somewhere else. We need to recognize that there's a demand, we need to ensure that that demand is satisfied, and we need to ensure that that demand is at the highest efficiency level possible. So it's a different approach. If you consider groundwater on its own, if we try to enforce groundwater on its own, I can say when we tried that aspect, we failed. When we shifted our policies towards this more integrated approach, this more flexible approach, we're seeing signs of success. I'm not saying that we managed to solve all the problems. It will take a lot of time, but the first indications from this policy shift, which now is 10, 15 years in the making, are quite encouraging.
Very good, very good. That's quite interesting. Well, you both mentioned a problem, and we have one situation when we talk about groundwater with hydrogeologists. One of the concerns about the groundwater industry, and if we scare people about problems with groundwater, they will sell less wells and less water pumps and equipment. So the industry is never really keen on helping save groundwater because they're afraid of building less wells. But on the other hand, we still have a compensation because we need some more recharge, and recharge might need wells as well. I have one question for you. How can we go better by educating people on how to manage water and groundwater in particular, because that's what we're talking about here in the Groundwater Project? How can we educate people? Do you have experience on education about groundwater in your countries that could be useful for other people and could be useful, and we could use at the Groundwater Project to spread the information and to spread the knowledge to other countries? Any one of you, please.
Should I say something?
Please.
Yes. Actually, there are many outreach programs which have been launched by the government of India to educate the farmers, for efficient and for using the water in the optimum way so that wastages are avoided. That is very important, because some of the areas in the hard rock regions of India means South India and the Central India, where hard rocks are more exposed also, and they are close to the surface. So there the problem of groundwater availability is more. Whereas in the northern part, where Ganga plain is there, the problem of groundwater availability is not so acute. So this is the major difference. And the farmers are educated by the government in the various outreach programs which government is running for the farmers from time to time. That is one thing. And second thing is that, we through our artificial recharge programs, they are massive. The artificial recharge programs are extremely massive in some of the states of India. For example, just I'll tell you, in the home state of our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, there more than 100,000 check dams were constructed in Gujarat state of India when he was the chief minister of that state. So like that, in many states and in the hard rock areas particularly, these check dams and all that, they have been, there is a lot of awareness about the farmers in the minds of farmers, and they are in fact helping government efforts to use the water optimally and in a very conservative way. But still there are problems of availability of water and all that. There is some people are there in India who are called watermen of India, so so they are also advocating the efforts which are made by the government for judicious use of the water. And groundwater, as I told you, it plays a major role the surface water projects, they became very old also, and a lot of surface water projects, they faced environmental issues. A lot of demonstrations from the public representatives and so on. Therefore, government is not keen on taking up new surface water projects, whereas the groundwater, because of its availability almost in all seasons and in many areas. Of course, there are some difficult areas also, but groundwater is finding more and more application, more and more better use by the farmers.
Thank
So
you.
that's
Thank
what I
you.
want to say. Thank you. Thank you.
Manuel, please.
Well, from our part, let's say one of the major uses of groundwater is definitely agriculture. And we're referring now to private use and a multitude of private use, because even in our case, we're talking about small-scale agriculture. The land per farmer is much smaller than 2 hectares. Obviously, the size of Malta is also very, very smaller. And we operate as a system of self-supply, where most of the farmers have their own wells, their own abstraction wells. Well, one thing which is really important is, let's say, first of all, is having the correct information, which can be communicated to farmers. Farmers know a lot about their practices, and to communicate with them, we need to have the correct information. There was an issue about, let's say, over abstraction by the agricultural sector, the abstraction patterns of the agricultural sectors. Having meters on boreholes have made us more aware on what's happening, and we can also guide them as to what's happening. But let's say the approach is that the approach which we've taken is that the meter is not an enforcement tool. It's an information tool which serves to help the farmer who wants to operate his practice correctly. Then, if there are issues, it can serve as an enforcement tool. But the first intention is a good intention. Also, it's the message which is important. For example, in the case of self-abstraction, farmers pay all the costs related to abstraction of groundwater, including electricity, the construction of the well, the operation and maintenance of the well. And that has a cost. With the data, and when we tried to cost this came to something between 25 euro cents and 50 euro cents per cubic meter, depending obviously on the volume which they abstract. And compared over the total abstraction of the agricultural sector, that goes into millions. So getting this information across and giving a cost to groundwater, even this indirect cost, and approaching a user with advice on how he can be more cost effective, which to him means increases profits, it's a different way of approaching the problem. What is my interest is that the groundwater yield abstraction is reduced. What is of the interest to the agricultural person is that he has lower costs and he has better quality groundwater. So therefore, these win-wins which we try to search. Also, through a current national water conservation campaign in the country, we focused a section of the campaign on the agricultural sector. We're working with a number of farmers, giving them advice, implementing changes to how they manage water, including groundwater, in the campaign, and then the results obtained will be used as best practice cases to disseminate to other farmers. Now, this includes the development of rainwater infrastructure, harvesting infrastructure to reduce groundwater abstraction, increasing or facilitating connecting to treated waters. But first of all, what will be the savings from the reduced abstraction of groundwater, and what will be the, let's say, improvement in groundwater quality, less seawater intrusion, if abstraction is reduced? These are two important factors for the agricultural sector, and these are two important factors which can make us, if we can manage to, with real data, with real information, to convince the agricultural sector that these measures work, to help us then now move into, let's say, this advisory plan, this supportive plan, of trying to reduce the impact of groundwater abstraction by the agricultural sector, whilst sustaining the future of the sector. No one is saying we don't need agriculture because we need food. But we need to ensure that the capacity of agriculture to produce our food can go on into the future. And that needs groundwater, and that needs groundwater to be there. So the message with the agricultural people is how we can together protect groundwater. It's these types of different approaches which we're moving on at this time, and let's say, which has come from an experience of certain strategical decisions of how to approach the issue in the past, which, as I said, were not the best decisions to be taken. But as one says, definitely you learn by doing, and this is how we are fine-tuning our approaches based on the experience, based on our own experience of what our failures have been.
Thank you very much. Very nice. Well, unfortunately, our time is it's up here because we're supposed to be a bit shorter. So I'd like you to make a final statement, and considering the groundwater project that you're helping us build, okay? If you could say a final statement about the groundwater project and your participation, please, Dinesh. And I'd like you to make a short saying in your language, Dinesh, the language that you're using with your friend there, or your son, I don't know.
Oh, you want in my language?
First in English and then in your language, please.
Okay. So, we are, as I told, that situation of groundwater in India is not as gloomy as it has been reported in some media, foreign media, Indian media, and I am very optimistic about it. Particularly, there are areas in our country, in the North India and or northeastern part, where the groundwater development is still lacking, and the Ganga basin particularly is very huge in area, and it contains very good quality of water. That is the greatness of the big asset with us. And with keeping these things in mind, I am quite hopeful that we will be able to overcome this problem of shortage of water by using the artificial recharge or the MAR programs, because government of India is spending a lot of money for implementation of these MAR programs. So if you want me to say in Hindi, I can say, yeah.
Please,
So,
go ahead.
Sorry, yeah. So हमारे देश में, इंडिया में भी हमारे ग्राउंड वाटर सिचुएशन काफी there is a ray of hope, you can say, that we are still hoping that things will improve, and government of India, ये लोग जो है, they are able to satisfy the farmers about the needs of their needs for water in their farms or in their fields, so that the food production is increased. As you know that India used to import पहले जमाने में long back.
Excuse me, Dinesh, I need you to wrap up.
Yes.
We don't have
So
time.
in old times हम लोग पहले पानी food grains we were importing from the other countries like USA and all that, and even Canada and other countries. And now we are able to produce enough food for our large population. So with these remarks, I finish. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Say something now for groundwater people in your language, please. But very short sentence.
So in Hindi, because I am afraid, who will translate it for you?
No one.
मेरी उम्मीद पूरी उम्मीद है कि हमारा जो देश है, पानी की जो आत्मनिर्भरता, self dependence of water, it will increase because of the lot of natural facilities. जो natural facilities available हैं, due to that we will be able to overcome these difficulties. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dhanyavad.
Thank you. Thank you. Please, Manuel, your final statement.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Now, looking at the groundwater project, I believe that it can fill a very important gap with regards to groundwater knowledge. We are facing a challenge in different countries in the world with regards to water availability. Groundwater is one of the major sources of water in a number of different countries. We're facing similar challenges. We're sometimes addressing these challenges in isolation, and therefore we need to actually look at how we can learn from each other. Capacity building is very, very important, and the groundwater project can actually fill this gap of providing a broad base of knowledge for the practitioners of the future. And that is a very, very important contribution which this project is making, and which hopefully together with you and with the team behind the groundwater project, we can continue to support to move forward. Then, to actually close off as regards a statement in Maltese, I would say, l-ilma jibda minnek. So, ilma is water. An interesting fact. So, ilma is the mother, because water is the mother of our life. So, ilma jibda minnek means that if we want to protect water, you have a role. It is not a government's problem, it is not a country's problem, but challenge more than problem. But water management, protecting water, is something which each and everyone's small contribution can count to.
Very good. Very good. I like it. Thank you very much, both of you, for helping us, for participating in the groundwater project. It was very interesting. We have the problem of intensive use of groundwater in many places in the world. And today we had two major examples here, India and Malta, two important persons that you should meet. Please take a look at our event, like our video, and tell your friends about our channel. Thank you very much. And I hope
sure. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks to everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you for participating in our session today. And we're glad to have you back again, Dinesh and Manuel. Thank you very much. You're very kind for helping us, and your, personal generosity towards the project is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
I have some questions here I'd like to from the audience to send to you, please. First one is from Imran Aziz Tunio from Pakistan. My question is with Indian expert. Is Saraswati River still flowing underground? If yes, then why invisible? That's for you, Dinesh. And secondly, is Hakra River still flowing? If yes, then which location it will be outfall into the sea?
So, no, I could not follow your question, please.
First, well, me neither, because I don't know exactly where the rivers are in India, but I'll reread that for you. Is Saraswati River still flowing underground? If yes, then why invisible?
Some rivers, you mean the rivers are invisible?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is one river which is called Saraswati River in northern India, and it is at some places it is visible in the sense that there is effluent seepage. Due to effluent seepage, you can see the course of the river on the satellite pictures, but otherwise it is inside, and it is called River Saraswati. It is the hidden river in our North India. Okay, but otherwise most of the rivers are, as you know, it's very obvious that they are visible.
Okay, the second one is Hakra River still flowing? If yes, where it outflows to the sea?
You want to say that you are not seeing them joining the sea?
That's
Yes,
what I
actually,
guess that's what. Yes,
it
I'm
doesn't
not
go
sure.
directly to the sea, because it is meeting one of the river Ganga in Allahabad area in North India.
Okay, so Imran, if you're still there and if you could clarify your question, that will help us, please. Okay, thank you. So I have another question that after your discussion is from Daniel Cardozo from Brazil. There are two cases very different from each other here. Malta has a reputation of having a water with bad taste for tourists,
Okay.
which is minor compared to the Indian problems of suicide of farmers. My question is to both of you. How your personal experiences could help each other, and of course viewers like myself here. Thank you. That's Danielle from Brazil.
Well,
No, I'm not able to get your question actually.
Question is, you have two different cases here he mentioned. Malta has a reputation of having water with bad taste for tourists. And he says this is minor compared to the problems of the suicide of farmers in India. And the question is, how can you, Dinesh, help each other, help Manuel's problem in Malta and Manuel's back to India, and also how the example of both of you could help someone like him. He lives in Brazil.
Actually, it is area specific. You see, this solution is area specific because the 2/3 of our country is made up of hard rock formations which are close to surface or they are exposed above the ground. So uh, about Malta, I do not know. Manuel may be able to explain better. Manuel
Okay,
Sapiano.
Manuel, please.
sure. Let's say, yeah, water has an issue with taste, mainly because of disinfection, so mainly because of chlorine. But let's say it's safe to drink. And that chlorine is important also to keep, let's say, biological issues at bay. If you look at what Malta has done, basically, one would look at the advent of technologies. And that could be an area where, let's say, Malta has experience in not developing technologies, I would say, adapting technologies could help and could be of use to other countries. Obviously, we're mentioning India and Brazil, and there's a difference also in scale. So, let's say, solutions would need to be scaled up.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you. So one question that came to me now, this is from myself. Is an intensive use of groundwater all about not enough water? Is underground storage a way out? Can we help? Could
Can you
artificial recharge or something like that solve the problem or not? This is not enough.
Oh, well, as far as India is concerned, my answer is that artificial recharge is helping our country very profusely. And there are about 15,000 observation wells, including about 9,000 automatic water level recorders. So monitoring has indicated that water levels are slowly coming up, due to the recharge from the not only from rainfall due to artificial charge also many of the in many areas, particularly the western state of Gujarat in India, from where our prime minister comes, so more than 100,000, about 160,000 check dams have been constructed as part of the artificial recharge program. So the artificial recharge program is helping us greatly. And moreover, in 2012, Government of India started a massive program of aquifer mapping in the all the states of country, and more than about 20,000 million square kilometers. I can repeat, more than 20,000 million square kilometers is area is being studied again aquifer wise, and it has been found that there are 14 distinct aquifer units in our Indian territory, and there is a systematic improvement on as well as demand side as well as supply side. Okay, so it is helping a lot. And India, only problem in India is that sometimes poor maintenance of artificial recharge structures. Maintenance because many of them are government sponsored schemes. So the maintenance is poor. So that is a negative factor you can consider.
Well, no, I would say managed aquifer recharge is one of the solutions. It's not the solution, it's not the only solution. It's one of the solutions which can be applied where there's, let's say, a lot of pressure on groundwater resources. And yes, that pressure comes because of unavailability. So the more, let's say, the less available natural freshwater resources are, the more important tools like managed aquifer recharge become. But it's not just that. So we need to look at then the sources of water. So one can look at water reuse, which can provide the source of water. So good quality water reuse. Reclaimed water can be used for managed aquifer recharge, but we're talking about supply augmentation. One has also to, in parallel, work with demand management. So we need to be, first of all, efficient in how we use water.
Very good, very good. So there's a question for you here. Like when you think as a scientist, we try some smaller experiments and then we try to scale up. And Malta, you know, being an island, has an impressive water management system as you presented to us. How could this be, or your experience could be scaled up for larger countries? Have you seen this, you know, similar experience of scaling up because you have an overview of everything being an island. What's your experience, Manuel? What could you say?
Well, looking at, let's say, at Europe most of the time. So the solutions which are in Malta can be applied in coastal areas, I would say quite easily. What we're looking at is, let's say, integration. So the same as what happened in Malta. So desalination of seawater. Production alone didn't solve the problem. It's the context in which you place the desalination plant. So the way you maintain your distribution network, the way you engage with people to keep demand low. So it's that model, it's that working model, and that can be scaled up.
Yes, thank you very much. Talking about pumping, well, this is a situation that comes to my knowledge, like talking about pumping less water. Like when we think about overproduction, or you know, when we have intensive use, you know, pumping less water is usually like a hurting subject, either to users, because they, like Manuel has mentioned, people go, you know, clandestine wells, and they, you know, they hide their use because it's hard to find wells, right? And also to hydrogeologists. Hydrogeologists are very sensitive about when you say that we have to use less water in some places, because many, you know, industries related to the hydrogeology industry are, you know, well drillers, right? So is there a way out to sensibilize people without hurting either hydrogeologists and people in general on using water wisely? Groundwater.
Okay. Can I answer this?
Please, you're welcome.
Yes. Okay, so you know, in India, they about 60% of the investigation units, you know, they are overexploited, you know, because of the high dense population and because of other reasons. You know, our farmers who want more water, they want more water, and therefore it becomes it is a kind of inherent duty of the hydrogeologist and the government, you know, to provide the facilities of more pumping of water. But what happens is when there is over exploitation, due to over exploitation, water levels is going down and more lift is required, more energy is required to lift that water from the wells. So that is the major reason that sometimes with deepening water levels, it becomes difficult for the farmer to draw more water. That is the main thing. But I think our government is very cooperative in that sense, and it is providing all the facilities of agricultural refinancing. It is called, there is one organization in India, it is called NABARD. NABARD is National Bank of Rural of Agriculture and Financing. So this NABARD with the help of loans available from the government agency like NABARD, our farmers are uh, they are willing to work very hard to increase the food production, because India, is having a very dense, very high population, and for meeting their needs of food, the water is a basic requirement. So we cannot, farmers are ready to take the risk. They are willing to take risk to pump more water, even though water levels are going down, they are declining. So that is the problem with the farmers.
Manuel.
Yeah. No, I would say the first thing is that we need to recognize that there is a demand. So if I need 2 glasses of water every day, if you can give me one, I'll try to get the one from another place. I think that's normal.
Yeah.
So once we recognize the demand, we have to see if there's sufficient supply, natural, which can be used sustainably. If no, then we need to create. Now, if we look at agriculture, a possibility could be, particularly in areas close to urban centers, it could be reuse. So, substitution of supply. But we could also try to look back and rediscover our culture, particularly the culture in arid countries, where rainwater harvesting and in reservoirs, but also rainwater harvesting for aquifer recharge comes from our history and has been neglected because it's much easier to drill a hole and put a pump. So it's a compendium of solutions, but all the solutions together need to address the demand. And once more, there's an issue of efficiency. So even if it's agriculture, there's a technology now. So how much are we investing in irrigation technology? An issue which, let's say, is an argument most of the time back home is, okay, water management in agriculture is not just water management, it's also agriculture. It's the responsibility of the agricultural sector. So is this trying to move towards a shared responsibility, which is not easy, because it's easier for each sector to say, yeah, it's a water problem, solve it. But it's also an agricultural problem because there are solutions which can come from the sector, drip irrigation, tensiometers. So we've got the technology, we need to apply it. Sometimes for farmers to invest in technology, they need security. So solving the security of supply with giving them alternative supplies can incentivize then investments in efficiency. So it's a circle.
Yes, I understand. Well put. Well, there's a final question here because today we don't have much time. We have another panel after us here. And then sort of complement what we're talking now. Well, you mentioned the problem. And when we think, we that are technicians, we understand hydrogeology. We live in a different world because we can think with tools that the general people don't have, because we've been working with that information for so long. So the question is, do you think that in order to use groundwater more sustainably, we have to go beyond the technical side and also educate the general public about where the water is coming from? And this is mainly, I think, this now I'm saying what I think. This is the main target of the groundwater project. It's going beyond the hydrogeologist. We'll first start with hydrogeologist, and then we have to reach beyond, which is not easy. So if you could add something for that, that would be very welcome, please.
Yeah, one important thing, usually put it, addressing myths. So, where does the water come from? It's finite. What happens when you pump water? Well, an island is a coastal aquifer, so seawater comes in, but seawater does not have any color. So sometimes it's too late to, when the water is too salty, that people start to realize that there's a problem and that water is not filtered through the rocks. So sometimes it's addressing these myths, these popular beliefs, and then, let's say, offering support, so codes of practice. If you're operating a well, how to best operate it under different conditions? What could be a good pumping rate? What could you do to avoid contamination from the surface? Sometimes these, let's say, guidebooks, guidelines, are not that easily available, and then people just take it up to what they think. So yes, I would say if we can together develop guidelines which are positive and can help people operate, abstract water, but abstract it in a sustainable manner, then yes, why not? I think that's another part of the solution.
Thank you. Dinesh, you have something to add?
Actually, main challenges which our farmers are facing, and even hydrogeologists are realizing it, that there is, in some parts of the country, there is geogenic contamination, like arsenic, then from nitrate because of the anthropogenic factors. So like that, then in this coastal areas, the seawater intrusion is quite common, and for that, our hydrogeologists and experts, they are engaged in trying to find out solutions for preventing the seawater intrusion, and then this can be easily, situation can be controlled by the suitable methods of artificial recharge or by spacing the wells accordingly so that the seawater intrusion is avoided. Particularly our coastal line is very long. Our coastline in India is very long, and therefore in many parts of the country we are facing the problem of seawater intrusion. And in the North India, there is plenty of water because of the alluvium. Loose alluvium is there, so there is no shortage of water. But in the South India and Central India, the problem is more acute, and in coastal regions, they face this problem of water availability. Still, I would say, till now, we have not started desalination. We have not started desalination of seawater and those kind of things. We are still able to control the situation to the satisfaction of farmers. So these are some of the solutions.
All right, thank you. Our time is up here. I would like to thank you both for participating again. You're being very generous, with your initiative to help us with the groundwater project. I hope we can count on you on many other times in the future. Thank you very much. If you would like to say just a final word, a goodbye to everybody, and help people to join our project, you'll be more than welcome. Please, Manuel.
So no, thanks also to you. There's been a number of interesting sessions which we've been following, and still some other interesting sessions remain. I hope that this can be something which can be taken forward. And no, let's say the sessions I managed to follow were interesting, and I would encourage, let's say, whoever can to follow remaining sessions and to keep following the project and the activities.
Thank you very much, Manuel. Dinesh.
Yes, As I told you earlier also, we are optimistic, you know, and we know that we will be overcoming the problems associated with the groundwater withdrawal, lowering of water levels, and the quality of groundwater because of geogenic contamination, those kind of things. And we have a systematic program of aquifer mapping which has been started with by Government of India, and it is helping us, and a large area of our country has already been covered by systematic aquifer mapping. So with this, I think I thank you very much for having patience. Actually, this is the night time here. Right now, it is
Oh,
two in the, so maybe there are some yes problems. Yes. So thank you very much for giving an opportunity to me. It was nice talking to you.
thank you very much. Thank you for both of you again. Thank you for you who are watching us and who will be watching us later on YouTube. We would like to thank again our sponsors and to all the participants on the Groundwater Project. This is a volunteer project. All of the people that are participating here are doing that for their heart. This is a labor of heart. And these are good for the countries that are participating on that and good for the planet. Do your part, help the Groundwater Project and help groundwater making it
Thank
visible.
you.
Thank you very much. Bye,
It is
everybody.
our pleasure. Yes, our pleasure.
Bye.